Hey everyone, I'm Neal, bringing you another episode of the Flags Only podcast, and I am very lucky today to have Phil Cutler joining me. So I'm going to read just, so I did some research on you, Phil. I'm going to try to read a little bit about your background. I'm probably going to miss like 10 things because it seems like you do everything. But Phil lives and breathes football up north in Canada. He was just named, I think, a couple months ago, the new head coach of the McGill flag football program. He is an alum of McGill. He played, I think, 4 seasons on the defensive side. It seems like after that, he transitioned into flag, where he, as of 2022, is an inductee into the Flag Plus Football Hall of Fame. He has played with Team Canada. It seems like he transitioned into quarterbacking at a certain point. But what really caught my attention about Phil's story, which I want to hear more about from you, Phil, is this recent launch of the World Flag Series and what you're trying to build there. So welcome to the pod, Phil.
Well, Neil, thanks for having me and appreciate the introduction. It's a lot easier to have somebody else telling the story and listening to it than sharing it on your own. But I appreciate that and appreciate what you're doing to try to grow the game.
Yeah. No, I'm happy to sing your praises. You're right. It's a lot easy. It feels weird to be like, I've done all of these things. You just let the trophies in the background, I guess, speak for you. So as you probably are now guessing, Phil, I'm a hard hitting journalist, and so I have to ask you a really tough question out of the gate. With everything that you do you like drink a lot of coffee, or you don't sleep? Like, how do you multitask like this? Because you're doing a lot.
It's a good question.
Yeah.
So I'm not a caffeine consumer at all, actually,
Wow.
which
Okay.
surprises people. I never was. I never got into coffee or tea, anything like that. If I have chocolate too late in the day, it'll keep me up at night. So
Uh-huh.
I
Yeah.
rely more on getting my heart rate up through exercise, which
Mm.
tends to work for me. Um, I have two young daughters, so when it comes to sleep, I'm not really the one who gets to control all of that,
Mm.
which is fine. But I think, over the years, I've learned how to manage my time really effectively. And, I think for entrepreneurs, you have to live and breathe what you're doing. And I certainly do. I love flag football. I love, building businesses. So for me, this is something that, it doesn't take energy away. It gives me energy. And so it lets me do something that I love. And, I wake up every day excited about all the challenges we have. And, you know, I get to prioritize, something that I really enjoy professionally, which is great.
Yeah. I understand being energized by working on projects, but I've been drinking coffee since I was 16, I think. And so the idea of not drinking some kind of caffeine. I know some people have like 5 or 6 cups a day, and actually a former manager of mine who's also Canadian, I think he was from Toronto. Um, he, definitely like operated on a very high volume of Diet Coke and green tea. So different strokes for different folks. But like given how passionate you are obviously about the sport, I would love to hear more about your journey to now, because like I said at the top, you obviously have like a pretty deep football pedigree and tackle, and now like definitely in flag. So like I'm lucky enough on this pod that I get to talk to people from different walks of life, and everyone kind of has their own unique journey. So could you tell me more about like what got you into football, in the first place, and then specifically in flag?
Yeah, for sure. I think, like a lot of folks, I started playing football, in high school, tackle football, and continued playing in university. As you mentioned, I played at McGill, which was a great experience. I had the chance to play with Laurent Duvernay-Tardif, who played in the NFL. Won the Super Bowl with Kansas City. I played with Jesse Briggs, who won several Grey Cups with Winnipeg Blue Bombers. So, I got a great football experience in college. But during that time, off season, outside of when we were actually like playing, it was still fun to be involved in football. And, my friends who weren't necessarily playing at the collegiate level, we got involved with flag football. Very, very recreational, very casual way. It was a league that was just starting off back then called Flag Plus Football, which now labels itself the largest recreational flag football league in the world. I can't fact check that for you, but that's what they say.
I believe you.
And there's hundreds of teams. It really is a huge organization, and we were involved from the very beginning. And it was just me and a bunch of my buddies who, we played football in the park together growing up, and I wasn't a quarterback. I had never played quarterback, but I guess I was the one who just like could throw the ball the best between us, and ended up kind of like in that position, and that was over 20 years ago, which is crazy to say now. I've stayed involved. I've played consistently since then. The game has really changed quite a bit, and I've had a front row seat at watching how that's evolved, which has been really fun. And especially the last like 4 or 5 years, you've seen an acceleration of how it's evolved. But even from when we started to today, I could almost, you could never imagine that we would get to this point. And I feel like we're still very much in the early innings. It's the infancy of this sport, and I just feel very privileged to have been able to have a front row seat. Now I get to play quite a bit internationally, which is really a privilege. So after graduating from McGill, I started a technology company that grew to be pretty significant in size. So I started that, scaled it, ran it as CEO for over a decade. And then 2 years ago, I stepped away operationally. And that gave me the chance to spend more time on other things, family being one of them. But one of the priorities for me for sure was playing flag football, which I had done consistently, but, obviously was secondary to building my business. And so it gave me the chance to focus on that. I hired a quarterback coach, Ken Mistroli, who's a well-known NFL quarterback coach, does a lot of the college quarterbacks as well as they prepare for the draft. Like really top-notch guy. He worked with me on my mechanics, on my gameplay, everything like that. And I feel like I took a pretty big step in order to like give myself a chance to push as far as I could as an athlete, as a competitor on the flag football field. That's created some really cool opportunities. Obviously, like getting identified by Team Canada and Football Canada was a huge accolade for sure. And then I ended up getting recruited by an international all-star team called the International Frogs, which is based in Slovenia. And so I've played now in a bunch of tournaments internationally, Croatia, Germany, France. I played in the US quite a bit. So flag's really given me a lot of different opportunities, which I feel very privileged to be able to do.
Yeah, I think you said like 17 different things that I feel like I want to touch on. So maybe I'm going to need to do like 7 pods with you. You're kind of like the Jason Bourne of flag football, I guess, because you're like in Slovenia with one passport, and then you're in Canada with another, and then you're going to be in Florida, in Tampa as a founder. So I think just to go back to like, I want to try to walk through some of the things you said. You said, so you've been in flag for, I think you said 2 decades, 20 years. And how like you're seeing flag really take this next step up where it's going to be in the Olympics, and it's really getting recognition in ways that it just wasn't before. As somewhat of an OG in the sport, like does this feel surreal to you, or are you sort of like, yeah, what took everyone so long to recognize like this is what it should be?
It's funny. I think people who have been in the sport for a long time never thought about the potential. They didn't get involved because there was like some long-term aspiration that they could work towards. They just did it because of the love of the game. And so for me, and I think a lot of people that have been at it for this long, we feel like this is, long overdue, but never really what we expected or not why we got involved in the first place. And every time that I hear about, something new that's happening, a new announcement, you're always like, wow, like it's crazy to have been involved for this long and now to see the progress and see the innovation. It makes me feel like, I really am part of a community. And I think flag football definitely has those roots. And 20 years from now, everybody who's involved in the game today is going to look back and say, wow, I can't believe it was, that, that basic or that like simple back then. Now it's evolved and there's, the professional side of things. And then there's just like, there's going to be so much and who knows where it's going to go. But, when you look back over a 20-year period, like, I don't even remember what we were using as flags back then, and like today,
Right.
obviously, like a lot of that's been standardized, but, we were kind of like, no one was thinking about it from that perspective. It was just like, hey, there's a field available at like 7 p.m. on Tuesday. Who's ready to go play? Some guys raise their hands and show up, to like today where like you've got tryouts, obviously like on the professional side, like there's contracts, like there's so much more that goes into it that, I'm excited about where it's going to go in less than 20 years. 5 years, it's probably going to be unrecognizable.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this is something that like I love in my coverage. Like this is something that I'm really fascinated with. And that's like the S curves that you see in tech of like these like early adopters. And then like all of a sudden there's this exponential growth. And I feel like we are just seeing like the start of that rocket ship upwards. And so for obviously you've dedicated a lot more resources and energy into Flag than I have. It just must be a really cool feeling to see. And especially now that you're transitioning, like obviously you still play at a very high level, but you're a coach as well. And so like you know, it seems like you've been playing for 20 years. And so you're going to have players on your team that you're coaching who are 19 years old or 20 years old for like when they were born, you were already playing flag. Like what's that transition to coaching really like? What are you seeing in that? Like what are the benefits of it for you as a person, as an athlete? Because I think it's very different, like being a coach and being an athlete, being a manager and being an individual contributor. I work for a tech company, and so like we could probably talk for 3 hours about that. But like what are your plans for like how you're going to make being a coach like effective as much as you've made being a player effective?
That's a good question. Definitely a big difference, obviously, between being a player on the field and coaching, for
Yep.
sure. I think coaching is more akin to like being a CEO, right? Where you're responsible for, you know, coaching everybody around you and managing a lot of it, but you're not necessarily doing.
Yeah.
When you're on the field and you're playing, like you actually have to carry this out. You're more of an IC. And so I think for me, like my experience, obviously as a CEO and like running businesses will translate really well, especially in the case of McGill. And, when I accepted the role, and I spoke with them, I made it very clear, like my objective is not to be a flag football coach, right? And not applying for flag football coaching roles. That's not what I want to do. I want to be the coach for McGill's flag football team. And there's two reasons for that. One, I have a huge connection to the university. I never really left. I graduated, but I've been on the board for the Faculty of Education where I studied for over 6 years. I've stayed involved with the Friends of McGill Football, which is kind of like our alumni group. And so I never really like left that. I have such great memories from McGill. Like McGill is such an established institution. Like it really means a lot to me. And when they decided to make flag football varsity, for me, it was really important that like I was able to build that program. And so, the first thing, obviously, McGill means a lot to me. It was critical that like if I was going to do this, I was going to do it there, nowhere else. And then the second thing is this is an opportunity to build a program from the ground up. And I love building. That's really important to me. The last few months since I've been named head coach have been really interesting because you're learning
Mhm.
obviously a whole new system, right? The bureaucracy of a huge institution like McGill has
Yeah.
all, there's benefits and there's challenges that come from it, which, I think in the end you have to figure out how to navigate and use those effectively. But I'm building the program. We don't have a team right now. Right. There was a club team that existed, but
Yeah.
that had no standards that, anyone could really participate and join. I think they had players who weren't even enrolled at McGill that were participating. So like now that we're varsity, we wear the block M, which is like the symbol of varsity for McGill. The standard is completely different. And so
Mm.
now I'm building that from scratch, building our training camp plan. There was none before, right? I'm negotiating with the rugby team, the soccer team for field time. Can we use the end zone here? Can we do that?
Mm.
Everything is very much in its like infancy and
Yeah.
we're building it. And I'm excited about that. And I think McGill is going to end up having a powerhouse program because it's the top academic institution. We're able to attract the top players, and a lot of the female flag players academically or scholastically are very strong as well. So we naturally attract those types of people to come to McGill. Now we give them the chance to play flag as well. For them, it's a perfect experience at the collegiate level.
Yeah, I mean, it's really, in a way, daunting to build something that just didn't exist before. And you said, like you're having to now face the bureaucracy, like probably the maybe less fun stuff about like building a program from the ground up. But like, given that you are already like a CEO and founder of a tech company, you're now like building this varsity program from the ground up, and you're also building the World Flag Series. It seems like, I'm not going to accuse you of having an addiction to building, but like it really seems like this is something that you really excel at. And so, like, how does that feed into what you're trying to do with World Flag? Because I feel like like suddenly like in the last 2 months, I'm seeing World Flag everywhere, and all the players that you're recruiting to be part of it. And I've noticed that you're calling it WFS 1, which sort of implies there might be a 2 and a 3. So like, what was the genesis of that idea to build this World Flag series?
You know, it's funny. Everything that's happening in the sport, right? It all kind of comes together in these interesting ways, and the coaching, the playing, just my international exposure more recently, all of that really aligned well in order to start something like World Flag Series. But I can give you really the background and
Yeah.
genesis. So, I think the flag community has been talking about what professional flag football could and should look like for a really long time. Right? I think it's, when you play sports, you're always sort of like imagining what could be. And obviously, for a really long time, my focus was building an educational software business. So I didn't really think too much about like myself being involved in making that happen. But it was about a year ago, I was training with some of the guys, who I train with. And one of my good friends, Joseph Hopmeyer, who's my co founder for World Flag Series, he was out and, we're on the field and we're training, we're sweating, we're putting in work. And he's like, man, like, I feel like the sport has really changed. Like, there's something missing that's, to take it to the next level. And that was really when we first started to think about, like, what could this look like? What are the opportunities to create something professional? And, a lot of people have talked about it. There's been a lot of like, hinting at this happening or that happening, but nothing concrete. And so it's probably about 5 or 6 months ago, we actually sat down and said, let's put together a plan of how we would do this if we were to make this happen. And his background is more on the operations side. He's been in commercial real estate as an investor. He operates a family office on the real estate side. And so he's very in tune with like how you build stuff as well, but from a different perspective than I do. I come at it more from the entrepreneurial side. And so we both have strong, strengths and weaknesses that support one another. And I talked a little bit about my experience, what I felt was missing. And flag football is the fastest growing sport in the world with the youth, which is amazing. At the collegiate level now, the NCAA has sanctioned it. The NAIA has been doing it for several years. In Mexican colleges, they've got scholarships. In Canadian colleges, right? U Sports has just sanctioned it as well. There's opportunities there. So there's clear pathways for women to play high school level, at the collegiate level. Then beyond that, like outside of making the national team, right? And even with the Olympic inclusion, that's 60 athletes who get a chance to participate in that. There really is very little that exists. Everything is recreational. Everything is like pay to play, and
Yeah.
athletes in the flag world are accustomed to that, right? We pay for everything that we do. But there's a massive audience. There's, hundreds of thousands, millions of players internationally who are looking up to these players, to these idols, and looking for people who they can, who can be the professionals, those role models.
Yeah.
And so we felt like it was time to create that platform. And so for the World Flag Series, it's really about the players more than it is the World Flag Series itself, right? We want to have players that, fit the bill, that, allow us to create a highly competitive environment, right? But also entertaining and, create memories for the fans who are the next generation of flag football, or the next generation of superstars, right? Like they're coming up. We want to give our athletes the platform in order to be able to like share their experience and then encourage the next generation to keep playing and have something to play for.
Yeah. I mean, I love what you said about, I mean, the fact that athletes, flag football athletes right now are really like self-funding this in a lot of ways. And I was talking to maybe you know him, Maxime Lavallee from Team Canada a couple
Yeah,
weeks
Max.
ago, Max. And I was talking to him and I was thinking about how funny it is that like he is playing against someone on a Saturday or Sunday, and then on Monday that person is like a dentist or an accountant or whatever, because like this is as you know, up until now and maybe for the next year or two, like before Tomorrow Sports launches their pro league, and before World Flag maybe takes off, is that this is really it can't be your full-time job. At least like you can't sustain yourself unless you're getting sponsorships and things like that. So like for the athletes that I think there's like you have 30 right now signed up for World Flag. Um, was it I imagine the answer is no, but like was it hard to get people on board, or you just like reached out and you're like, look, I'm launching this. Do you want to be a part of it? And like people said yes.
Um, It was a lot harder than you would think, and I'll
Okay.
tell you why. Um, there have been a lot of people, and I don't know if intentionally it was predatory or not, but they've spent many cycles working with these athletes, especially the elite flag athletes, telling them about things that are going to come, promising all sorts of stuff
Mm,
and not necessarily delivering on it. And so a lot of the conversations initially that we had, we were met with quite a bit of reluctance,
mm,
not because they didn't believe in it, but because they had been sold the dream before. And, as we walked them through our plan, how we were going to operate this, how it was going to happen, they started to gain more confidence. And so the first athletes, a lot of them were ones that I knew personally. And I said, listen, you know me, I've built a massive company before. I know what it takes to do this, right? We have the capital in order to bring this together. We're going to be able to create something that really is memorable. I need you to trust that this isn't just another sales pitch, right? Like you're going to be part of something special. And as some of those athletes started to lean in and ask us questions, and we had a couple that were like really tough on us during the process, they not only became more confident, but they were the ones that became like the ambassadors. They were the ones that were like, you got to speak to her. You got to speak to her. Like she's the best, this person, and so on. And that's when it really unlocked.
mm,
Obviously, once we announced the players and things became more concrete a few weeks ago, then it was much easier. I mean, within the first 24 hours, we had like 200 applicants,
mm,
right? Like it was insane. But prior to that, we weren't going around marketing this, right? We weren't like making noise. We weren't talking about it. We were doing all the hard work in the background, securing the venue, partners, like all the stuff that needed to happen so that when we actually brought this to the public, it was very clear, hey, this is happening, right? We like this is really going to take place and we're excited obviously about that, but there was so much work that went in behind the scenes for months in order to get to that point. So everyone's sort of seeing like a very buttoned up experience
mm.
today because we've done so much work in the background, and the team that I work with, they're incredible. Like they're doing so much to make this happen. And at the end of the day, I think the athletes are going to have a really memorable experience. I think the fans are going to have a memorable experience. I think the culture of flag is going to change as a result of World Flag Series 1. And to your point, Neil, like this is the first event. World Flag Series 2 is already being planned. World Flag Series 3, we're in the process of planning. So we're already getting that momentum. And I think it's going to be really exciting as the next few months come and go to see how everything evolves.
Got it. Yeah. I mean, it's exciting stuff. And I was reading, like, the website does seem very built out. And I feel like, I'm not going to ask you to reveal any confidential trade secrets or anything like that, but it does feel like you guys have big plans for this beyond just what's happening in July. It just seems like there's like some kind of infrastructure sitting there that is like ready to be filled out and maybe in other ways. But I
You're,
won't,
I
yeah.
mean, you're reading between the lines, which I
Mhm,
think um, your past experiences
mhm.
and yes, the journalistic traits that you have let you see that. But yeah, I mean, there's no question. Like we're not doing this for a one-off event, right?
Yeah,
Like there's a lot of structure behind what we're doing.
yeah,
But I will say at the exact same time, we don't have all the answers. We
yep,
definitely don't know how this is going to play out,
yep,
right? So we're kind of counting on the fans and the players to help guide this. We're
yep,
building this with them. And
yep,
a lot of players have asked us, what about this and what about that? And we said, I don't know. We'll see.
yeah,
What about men's? What about co-ed? I don't know. We'll see.
yeah,
If the fans want that, we'll make it happen, right? That's the benefit of creating this thing from scratch. Whatever the fans want, we're going to do our best to deliver that for them because at the end of the day, they're the ones that are going to allow us to survive. So
totally.
we have to build for them and with them.
Yeah, I mean, it's cool. There's no rules. Like you can, like whatever is working, you can build. Just I promised, I think, when I reached out that I wouldn't take up too much of your time, Phil. So, just I think a last question, just like what can people expect on? It's July 25th, right? Like what can folks expect from the tournament itself? Is it a round robin? I think it's 3 teams. Like what can folks be expecting to be seeing on the 25th?
So I'll answer that in two parts. The
Okay.
first is like, from a gameplay perspective, what will it look like? And then the second is what will the fan and an audience expect?
Yeah.
So it's 3 teams. There's round robin. So each team plays each other, then semis and finals. The entire event fits within like a 3 hour, 3.5 hour broadcast window. So like traditional broadcast sports. So everything will happen relatively quickly. The games are shorter. It's not full 20-minute halves. It's a little bit faster. The teams will play each other. Everything takes place, in that window. So, you tune in, it starts at 6 p.m. The broadcast starts a bit earlier, and Eastern time. And then, it should be done early enough so that for our younger audiences that are going to be there, they'll be able to like stay for the entire duration. And for us, it's going to be exciting because you're going to crown a champion at that event. It's not a
Mm.
multi-day event. It's not like you have to follow for, extended period of time. It really is condensed in a way that we think is going to be very well received by our audience who expect things to happen quickly, who want they're going to want to be part of it and see the start and see the finish. So that's kind of the game day expectation there. Now, for the fans and for the audience and everybody, I can tell you it's going to be highly entertaining. It's going to be done. The broadcast, the way that we are setting everything up, has never been done before. This is totally a unique way of approaching professional sports. And so we really want to give the fans an inside view in terms of like everything that's happening. So there's a lot of cool stuff that's going to happen. I definitely encourage anybody in Tampa to come to the event. It's going to be electric. It's going to be a lot of fun. You'll see the 30 best flag football players in the world participating. You're also going to have the chance to like be part of history. So we've got some really cool stuff that will make it memorable from that perspective. And then for everybody who's at home, the broadcast is going to be broadcast internationally for free. There's no paywall. So you'll be able to participate from that perspective and be involved. And for fans who are interested in sports betting, there's also going to be opportunities to wager on all of this, which is going to be pretty cool as well. So a lot of cool stuff happening.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm really excited for it. I hope maybe it sounds like you're already planning number two. Maybe you could put that in New York, so it's a little closer to home for me. But yeah, I mean, Phil, this has been great. I love what you're building. I love your story. I can't wait to see the World Flag Series in a couple weeks. And again, you pointed out I'm reading in between the lines, but I see stuff happening and a lot being built here. And I also just want to give you props because I feel like as cool it is as it is for me to come in and do my coverage of this, it's really folks like you who have been building this for decades, and you've been putting in the work just like other people. And so it must be rewarding for you to see. It's certainly rewarding for me and all the fans out there, maybe the fans that don't even know they're fans yet because they haven't had a chance to get exposure to it. And in a couple weeks, they'll watch World Flag for the first time and be like, whoa, flag is really cool. And so I just want to say thank you for the work you're putting in on this.
Well, appreciate that, and
Yep.
it takes the whole community. So,
Yep.
yourself and everybody else, your whole audience, you guys are the ones that actually make this thing work. Because on our own, nobody cares about the World Flag Series. It's the community that
Yep.
makes the whole thing successful. So, I'll share that, and I appreciate you and your audience as well.
Yeah. I think that's a great note to end on, Phil. Much appreciated.
Thank you very much.
All right. Bye, Phil.